Podcast.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm host John Henson, and today it is, we're almost a full week into it, but it is the first episode of the new month, which means it is another weird fun bag, the 28th time that we have done this. It's getting ridiculous, but whatever. 3 stories, just kind of, shorter, not super related to any one theme that we do. More or less. But I really want you to hear these stories because a lot of them are silly or super weird. And that's what we've got today. 3 stories looking at Albert Stevens, the Phantom Barber of Pascagoula, and our first story, and just buckle up. All right. It's Bock.
Story time. Story time. Story time? Story time.
Bock was born on January 17th, 1942. His father was 81-year-old Sea Captain Knut Victor Bockstrom, and his mother was 42-year-old Ria Bockstrom. So 39-year difference there. Quick little interesting fact about Ria Bockstrom. Her father was also 81-year-old Sea Captain Knut Victor Bockstrom. Oh, Norway. Knut's first and only other son had been killed during the Finnish Civil War in 1918. I guess they're Finnish. They're not Norwegian. Sorry, Norway. But Knut's first son had been killed in the Finnish Civil War in 1918, and he was desperate to continue his family's male line. And apparently, since no other woman in Finland or the world would have his child, he made his daughter do it. And then, completely unsurprisingly, Knut died a month after she got pregnant. And then baby Bock was formally adopted by Ria and her husband, who was apparently totally okay with this. Okay. However, and the weird thing about it, that's what Eeyore said happened. Right. And let's take it with a grain of salt, because official adoption records at the National Archive in Helsinki, that's Sweden, not Finland. Sorry, Finland. They're all the same, basically. That's probably super offensive to Norway, Sweden, and Finland. But, they're all super pale, blonde, blue-eyed people. They're all Scandinavian. All right? You put 3 of those people in front of me. I couldn't tell you which one was Norwegian versus Swedish versus Finnish. Maybe if you told me their last names, and one of them is probably Egbert Sorsen's son, sure, that's probably Norwegian. And then the rest of them, whatever. It's a toss a coin. Anyway, the official adoption records at the National Archive in Helsinki showed that Bock's biological mother was actually a 23-year-old gardening instructor from Porvoo, and that his father was a Spanish sailor. Now, according to Bock, because no one else really seems to care about this, the quote-unquote official records only tell that story because the true incestuous nature of his birth was too extreme for the public to accept. And maybe that's true. And honestly, neither of these explanations are great, right? I don't know which one you would really want to be reality. You want this guy saying that his mom and his dad, grandpa, had him, or that, it was just some random 23-year-old lady and a Spanish sailor getting it on that he didn't seem to care about, because he was insistent that he was born out of this incestuous cuck that that Rhea Bogstrom's husband was apparently okay with. Anyway, aside from that, Bock also claimed to spend time in orphanages as a child, and yet also spent time with his mother and sister aunt, who spent 2 hours a day teaching him about his family's saga. And you know, Scandinavians, they got a whole saga of their whole family. Like, they really get dramatic with their, like, I'm pretty sure, you know, it's just kind of like your family ancestry, your family tree, but they call it a saga. And it sounds so, like, whoa, so dramatic and epic. And it's just like, no. Right? It would be like me having an episode about my family tree and be like, oh, my family tree, my family saga. And it's just like, all right, so for the last like 6 or 7 generations, we've just kind of been in North Carolina. Some of them own slaves, you know, whatever. Now all that is to say, I did during COVID, did a ton of research on my family tree, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I found a line that stretched all the way back and was connected to like the Plantagenets and the Holy Roman Emperors and like even Prince John from Robin Hood. We didn't get King Richard. I was Prince John. I was the lion who everyone hated. That's my family, but that's fine. Attila the Hun somehow connected through this family line. So like not direct lineage, obviously, but along the way. And it was just through mothers and fathers of husbands and wives and such, right? And went back all the way, connected it back. And one of the red flags, I would say, is that line then also connected back to Adam and Eve, which, no. Because, like, that would be like, that would then be me saying, oh, yeah, I'm related to King David from the Bible. And that would make that 2% Jewish bit in my Ancestry DNA profile make total sense. And it's just like, no, I'm going to call, I gotta be realistic about some of that, all right? All that is to say, though, research your family history. See what you might find. So back to Ivar Bock. Like, while most Scandinavian families do have their sagas and their very detailed history of their family line, they're generally just oral traditions that are passed down to each new generation. But Bock believed that his family saga was very special. And he claimed that it was based on this very complex linguistic and mathematical system that originated from a pre-civilization language, which his family had kept perfectly preserved over the centuries. Sure. Even more, his family saga told the true history of the creation of the world, which began at a time when there were no seasons and the North Pole was a tropical paradise. And there's evidence that the poles used to be tropical. So he's not totally wrong in that, but also you could sling a dead chicken and stumble onto a fact every now and then, right? In your family history. But, his family's got these stories that have been passed down from generation to generation. He believes they're 100% true. Totally weren't, details weren't lost over the generations. It's not like this giant game of telephone being played. And it's not like, what's happened over the centuries and generations has gotten twisted and morphed because of different personalities and different interpretations of those stories. That would never happen. It certainly has never happened with the Bible. So it certainly didn't happen with Ivar Bock's family history. I don't know why I got super aggressive on that. Whatever. In Ivar Bock's story, in his family creation history story, at the tropical poles, he believed, or at least his family said, that the world came to be because an ape impregnated a goat, which then created the first humans named Frey and Freya. First of all, scientifically, that can't happen. A goat can't be boned by a gorilla or any other kind of primate, and therefore thusly get pregnant and create a totally different species. Also, like, if it did happen, it would be a monkey goat falling out of there. Like, and imagine however you want. I'm imagining like a chimpanzee with goat legs and little horns on his head. And that's kind of adorable in a way, but also horrifying, depending on how its eyes came out. Anyway, at the age of 7, and here we go. You thought it was weird so far. Buckle up. At the age of 7, Frey, the boy, he discovered that by putting his legs around his neck, he could drink his own sperm. I mean, listen, I'm not saying I've ever done it. I'm just saying you don't need to like contort your legs behind your head in order to do that. I think he's just doing work smarter, not harder, kid. That's all I'm saying. Even more, as he's drinking, he realized that once the sperm reached his brain, he would suddenly understand the fundamental language of the world and the role that he and his sister played in it. And he then knew that he and his sister had to populate the earth with more humans. And listen, I'm not going to pretend like incest back in the day was like as bad or unnecessary as it is now, because I think it had to start somewhere. And I think one of the biggest overlooked things in the Bible is how Adam and Eve, what even was Eve to Adam? I think they're just saying that Adam basically banging himself and getting himself pregnant in like a weird vicarious sort of way. But then Cain and Abel. Well, Abel died, but Cain, they had to have brothers and sisters for Cain and to continue that along the way and all the other stuff, right? So like, we just kind of gloss over that, you know, and we're just cool with it. That's we're just cool with it. So whatever. According to Eeyore Bock, this boy drinks his own jizz, and then he's like, oh, I need to bang my sister now and make more of us. And so according, you know, and obviously from that, Eeyore Bock is a direct descendant of that line. And then over time, descendants of his familial line, starting at the age of 7, would continue to ingest their own quote unquote sacred vines. And the practice was regarded as a virtue. So his whole family's just doing this, apparently. So while the men had to kind of like curl up or use the sauna knot yoga pose to quote, drink directly from their clubs, women, because I know you were curious, women could ingest their own ejaculate by just getting a large bendy straw, jamming it up in there, and sucking it out. This feels like I'm making it up. I'm not. This dude really believed this. Quote unquote heart friends, which were members of the same sex, very progressive, heart friends. That is adorable. All right. Let's call all the gay couples in our lives our heart friends. That's in a weird, gross, messed up story. What a touching moment. Heart friends, members of the same sex, would also, I'm going to lose it again, would also participate by sharing each other's liquids as a special sacrament to enhance their own respective fertility. And I don't know why you need to enhance your fertility if you're in a gay relationship. That's like the last thing you're going to need in a gay relationship is fertility, you know? But John, what about the lesbian couples who want to still conceive and have their own? Let's not split hairs on a story like this. All right? Anyway, moving on. By age 21, Bock had become a professional actor and also worked as a lighting technician at the Svenska Teatern in Helsinki. That year, in 1962, Bock shot and killed his adopted brother, Eric, Details of the shooting have always been murky. Bock claimed that Eric committed suicide because the family did not approve of Eric's planned marriage. The family claimed that the death was accidental and the result was just two brothers were kind of just playing around with each other. You know, two 20-something-year-old brothers just horsing around with guns. Honestly, it's not that far-fetched. I live in the South. That happens a lot. In his most famous acting role, Bock directed and starred in a commercial for the Coral Washing Machine Company. You can find this video online today. See this dude. Does not look like a dude who drinks his own jizz, but I don't know. What would someone like that look like? You know, what kind of are you imagining? Like a specific kind of person? Probably good hair, good skin. Maybe. I don't know. But the Coral Washing Machine Company, Eeyore Bock, go look it up. Totally unassuming. It's nothing special, but it is what it is. By the 1970s, Bock was working as a tour guide on the island of Suomenlinna, whatever, where he told long, rambling, bizarre stories about the mythology of the area and also mixed in his own elements of his family Bock saga, especially the part about rolling himself up to suck his own dick. And that's got to be weird, right? Like you're just taking a tour of this historical thing and your tour guide's just like, "Hearn defended, going to off and suck my wiener. Indivina makes me healthy." You know, and just that's just not something you ever wake up expecting to hear. Especially just going on a little historical tour, listening to some history, and all of a sudden your tour guide's talking about, you know, all the smoothies and stuff he makes with his own stuff. Anyway, he had also during this time, he had also began visiting Goa in India, which is this well-known hippie paradise at the time. During his visits, Bock worked to develop a crowd of followers, which ultimately led him to hosting sex parties and leading a charge to finance the excavation of a cave that he believed was the location of the Temple of Lemminkainen. And what was the Temple of Lemminkainen? It belonged to the Finnish mythological character of Lemminkainen, and was closed in 987 AD when Christianity arrived in the region and ordered pagan sites to be torn down or hidden out of sight completely. Bock believed that this cave, alleged cave, held a spiraling hallway with rooms that held treasures from each generation of ancient Finland. It doesn't. Archaeologists actually, and he gets funding for all of this, gets excavators and archaeologists out there. They made several digs at the cave site. Over the course of 12 years, first of all, only got about 160 feet deep, which in 12 years is pretty wild. Nothing was ever found, probably because mythological characters don't actually exist. Or the legends about them aren't real, right? Like Paul Bunyan, he is a mythological character in American history. Was there a dude named Paul Bunyan? Possibly, maybe. All right. Did he have a blue ox? Highly unlikely. All right. He also was probably not as big as the mythology was, right? So Lemminkainen, if he was a real dude, probably didn't have this massive temple and cave with a bunch of treasures in it. That's how folklore goes. But this dude, I would not expect someone who eats their own jizz every day to understand that. Like if you're at that point, you're just going to believe whatever you want to believe. When he wasn't leading excavations, Bock was telling his family saga, usually while naked, to anyone who would listen. Probably also giving demonstrations because he would get annoyed that the autofellatio element of his story got the most attention. And why wouldn't it? That's the craziest part of your story. But you're going to get annoyed. It's not the most important thing I ever started. Yeah, it is. However, despite that, he was still very pleased to host hundreds of guests for naked dances in the forest. In 1990, Bock and 33 of his followers were arrested on suspicion of using and distributing Indian hemp. The scandal surrounding this incident forced the withdrawal of the excavation sponsors, even though a lot of people were really interested in this dig site and uncovering this temple. because Finnish people, they love their sagas. And, sure. In 1999, Bock was attacked and stabbed several times, leaving him as a quadriplegic. Oh no! Can't contort ourselves to drink our old jizz anymore. Womp womp. While he did recover in the hospital and later back in Goa, India, debt collectors began seizing his assets and confiscating his properties. More than a decade later, in 2010, Bock was stabbed to death in his apartment by 2 Indian nationals who were working as his personal assistants. We are tired of drinking your jizz here, Bock. We are going to kill you. I don't know, man. Both men were actually found not guilty of the murder, but were deported back to India. So there you go. On June 5th, 1942, Mary Evelyn Briggs and Edna Marie Heidel were awoken in their bedroom at the Our Lady of Victory's convent in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and they saw a shadowy figure climbing out of their window. The ladies, fearing the worst, frantically looked to see if anything had been stolen, or worse, someone had been raped. Instead, they only found that the only missing thing was a lock of hair from each of their heads. A few days later, 6-year-old twins Carol and David Petey were given haircuts while they slept. A week later, the intruder cut out a window screen and broke into the home of Terrell Heidelberg. This time, however, the Heidelbergs were attacked with an iron bar. Terrell was knocked unconscious while his wife had several teeth knocked out. But unlike the other attacks, the intruder did not cut anyone's hair. I don't know why they connected it to the hair cutting, break-ins, but they did. The final incident occurred a few days later when R.E. Taylor was awoken by a strange smell before passing out. She awoke again hours later to see her window screen had been cut, a chloroform rag lying on the floor, and a lock of her hair missing. At this point, the Phantom Barber was on everyone's radar in Pascagoula. Yeah, Pascagoula, Mississippi. I did say that earlier. I was like, did I even say the city? I did. Newspapers had reported that as many as 10 homes had been broken into, and police were offering a $300 reward for any information that would lead to the barber's capture. Bloodhounds were able to follow a trail from the Heidelberg's house, but the trail ended at a pair of blood-stained gloves in the woods. 2 months later, Maris Talley from the Pinkerton Agency, Pinkerton's like the famous detectives who got involved in a lot of like assassinations and stuff. They're involved in this. They announced that the Phantom Barber had been captured. William Dolan, a 57-year-old chemist from Germany, had recently retired to Pascagoula after running a pharmacy for several years in New Orleans. Several witnesses claimed that Dolan had been seen near the site of the attacks, and police eventually found a bundle of hair, some of which was determined to have belonged to Carol Petey, one of the victims. According to police, Dolan had held a grudge against Heidelberg's father, who was a judge that had refused to lower Dolan's bail after he had been convicted of a trespassing charge a few months back. They then kind of surmised that Dolan wanted to scare the city's residents and weaken morale, since Dolan was likely a German sympathizer during World War II, and the area was home to a lot of shipyards and manufacturing plants that were producing war materials. Although Dolan pleaded his innocence, he was found guilty and given a 10-year prison sentence, but only for a charge of attempted murder against Heidelberg. The actual hair-cutting incidents were never tried. And since the Phantom Barber attacks stopped after Dolan went to prison, people around Pascagoula kind of just assumed that Dolan truly was the Phantom Barber, even though the hair-cutting attacks were vastly different from the Heidelberg assault. This is why I don't podcast right after I eat. I can't talk. 6 years later, in 1948, Mississippi Governor Fielding Wright was asked to re-examine the case. Dolan passed a lie detector and had his sentence altered before being fully released in 1951. He and his wife then left Pascagoula and moved down the coast to Waveland. But Dolan eventually grew frustrated over how his reputation had been tarnished. At that point, he signed over ownership of everything to his wife and disappeared. His body was found 3 weeks later in the Mississippi River near Chalmette, Louisiana, near New Orleans. Although Dolan's wife was adamant that the body was her husband's, the fingerprints taken from the body didn't match the ones on file from his time in prison. Instead, The real Dolan was arrested in 1954 in Sacramento, California on a vagrancy charge. When police confirmed that this man that had been arrested was in fact William Dolan, the life insurance claim his wife had put in for his alleged death was rejected. Despite all of this, with the details around the Barber attacks being so different from the Heidelberg assault, there's still a lot of doubt as to whether or not Dolan was the actual Phantom Barber or if the real attacker remained on the loose and just kind of stopped. Our final story happened in 1940 when chemists at the University of California, Berkeley synthesized plutonium for the first time and then isolated it a year later, which is apparently what happens with elements and is important for this story. By March of 1945, plutonium was being produced for nuclear weapons as part of the Manhattan Project. And despite all of that, scientists still weren't entirely sure how plutonium would affect the human body other than just vaporizing it completely if a bomb blew up. But that was problematic because there had been a few incidents the year before, including several instances of plutonium dust that had been tracked into civilian areas. Who would have thought plutonium dust? Just radioactive dust. And that's not a problem that we generally have to deal with here in the South. One thing out of the many. That's more of like a out west kind of issue where all those labs are. To make matters more complicated, plutonium-238 and 239 are what's called alpha particle emitters, which means they are very difficult to detect when they are inside a human body. The easiest way to detect those particles is by studying urine and feces samples, but even then, only a small fraction of the element is ever excreted. So as pressure mounted to test for exposure, human injection experiments were approved in April of 1945 at 3 different laboratories. So Albert Stevens, who was a house painter in California who had recently been misdiagnosed with terminal cancer, was selected for the experiment because, according to all of his doctors who thought he had cancer, he was, quote, doomed to die. So why not have fun with it? Even more, the timing of Stevens' diagnosis was helpful since cancer researchers were currently looking to see if radioactive elements were actually a cure for cancer. And yeah, kind of. Like that's what chemo and radiation therapy is. Stevens, who at the time only weighed 128 pounds, he was injected with a mixture of plutonium isotopes consisting of 0.2 micrograms of plutonium-238 and 0.75 micrograms of plutonium-239. Not only is this a lethal textbook dose of plutonium, but Stevens had absolutely no idea that he was part of this experiment because it's the 1940s. There's no HIPAA or there's no disclosure that you got to sign or anything like that. You're just like, hey, you want to just try some experimental cancer treatments? Sure, I guess I'm just going to die anyway. Let's see what happens. Squeeze all of the plutonium in it. So despite being absolutely flooded with radioactive material, Stevens' pathologist was shocked to find that following surgery to remove his cancer, everything had seemingly worked. Stevens had no more cancer inside of his body, mostly because he didn't actually have cancer to begin with. Doctors had simply removed a benign gastric ulcer, and his cancer removal surgery actually had not been necessary. Even though Stevens' radiologist and surgical consultant at the diagnosis concluded that he, quote unquote, probably had cancer. You like that? That's just doctors. He's probably got it. Who cares? They still recommended a gastroscopy to confirm the actual presence of cancer, but they then never actually ended up doing it. Instead, Stevens just had like this huge ulcerating mass that had grown to his spleen and liver. It wasn't like a malignant tumor or anything. It was just like kind of this ulcer. Regardless, the cancer removing surgery removed half of the left lobe of his liver, his entire spleen, his 9th rib, his lymph nodes, and part of his pancreas to help prevent the spread of the cancer that he didn't actually have. So, not only is he getting injected with a ton of plutonium, very radioactive, he also is just getting huge chunks of his organs removed from his body to prevent cancer that doesn't actually exist inside of him. Throughout this entire process, no one told Stevens any of this, by the way. His quote-unquote recovery was just deemed miraculous, and scientists for the Manhattan Project actually ended up paying to keep him in the San Francisco area to continue studying his samples under the guise that he was being researched for how he beat cancer, rather than how seemingly lethal doses of radiation weren't killing him. For the next 10 years, this dude provided urine and stool samples to researchers. Dude just peeing in cups and pooping in boxes and sending it to doctors. And the doctors are like, why isn't he dying? We are killing this man with so much radiation. He did eventually begin showing signs of degeneration in the lumbar region of the spine, which was a result of plutonium accumulation in his system. Over the 20-year period that Stevens was unknowingly part of this experiment, he received approximately 6,400 rems of plutonium. I know we all know what rems are, but let me give you a little comparison. The whole body dose that is currently permitted to people working in radioactive environments is 100 rems over the same 20-year period. Not per day, not a month, not a year. In the course of 20 years, the permitted body dose is 100 rems. Dude was receiving 64 times the allowable amount of radiation over this 20-year period. Stevens ultimately died of heart failure, not radiation poisoning, on January 9th, 1966 at the age of 79. His remains were cremated and shipped to the Argonne National Laboratory Center for Human Radiobiology. And the truth about this experiment wasn't actually uncovered until 1993, when journalist Eileen Wilson published a series of articles on the study, which she later expanded and published as a full book in 1999 titled The Plutonium Files, America's Secret Medical Experiments in the Cold War. In addition to Stevens, as many as 18 people between the ages of 4 and 69 were injected with plutonium, all of which had a terminal illness, probably. However, Stevens received the highest dose. Even more, none of the people in that experiment died from the injections, but rather their pre-existing illness. There we go. Weird fun bag number 28 in the books. Told you that was going to be a wild ride this week. So let us recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number 1, Eeyore Bock drank his own jizz. And I probably thought it was weird that no one else did it. It was like, I don't know what you guys' problem is. I mean, I'm blah, 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 blah. Yum. Just good breakfast. I'll do it again for lunch. And then he had the nerve to get annoyed when that's what people keyed in on about his family's life. No one cares about your family history, dude. We want to know why you think it is such a big deal that your dad was your grandpa and that you are totally all about just slurping your own gravy. It's disgusting. Anyway, number 2, in Pascagoula, Mississippi, someone just breaking into houses and cutting people's hair. That is the tamest story out of this episode, and on its own, still crazy. Number 3, Albert Stevens injected with way too much radioactive material, and it somehow didn't kill him. And then he also didn't even know about it on top of it. Go government.
What did we learn?
I mean, like, I will say, we've had the episodes about the real government projects and all the insane things they were doing to people and all that in the name of like trying to figure out technology to advance science or whatever. Like, the Albert Stevens thing ultimately is the reason why a lot of people get cured of cancer, right? Because all of the radiation, all of the chemo is a direct result of injecting Albert Stevens with a ton of plutonium and it not killing him. Again, it's one of those things where it's like, the result you got was, you weren't supposed to get that result. You got the right answer, even though you weren't supposed to. Like, show your work. You did it entirely wrong, but whatever, it worked out. Next week on the show, we are going paranormal. Couple of 2 parts over the next 2 weeks. We're going to do some random paranormal stories. Next week, 3 stories of the Skirvin Hotel, Antonio Villas-Boas, and the Moberly Jourdain incident. There's going to be some aliens, going to be some ghosts, going to be some like other kind of weird paranormal stuff over the next couple of weeks. But just kind of a little preview for our spooky themed episodes later in October. So come on back for that. Thank you so much for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird.
This is a podcast